In New York City, former President Donald Trump's legal future is in the hands of a grand jury, set to reconvene today, on the verge of an historic decision, weighing whether to indict the former president for his alleged effort to keep an extramarital affair a secret by paying hush money to adult film actress Stormy Daniels. Ahead of a possible indictment, law enforcement officials are bracing for protests, stepping up security. Former President Trump also preparing for the optics of a potential indictment. The New York Times, citing friends and associates, says he is ready and welcomes the idea of a perp walk, and even, quote, mused openly about whether he should smile for the assembled media, adding that he has pondered how the public would react and is said to have described the potential spectacle as a fun experience. Those close to him also telling the paper that no one is quite sure whether his remarks are bravado or genuine resignation about what lies ahead.
They're not coming after me, they're coming after you. I'm just standing in their way.
The possible prosecution by Manhattan District Attorney Alvin Bragg could center on a $130,000 payment that Mr. Trump's one-time fixer Michael Cohen says he made to Stormy Daniels on behalf of then-candidate Trump in the heat of the 2016 campaign to buy her silence about claims of an affair with Mr. Trump a decade prior.
All right, so here we go again. Another day, another bombshell dropping on Capitol Hill that has everyone losing their minds. And I mean, this one is different. This isn't some anonymous whistleblower or leaked memo that gets buried in 48 hours. No, this is a federal grand jury leak that is making Republican leadership sweat bullets right now. We're talking full-blown panic mode inside the GOP. So what happened? Well, a few days ago, on November 5th, Trump ally Mike Davis, who's super close to Pam Bondi, by the way, he goes public and announces that a Florida federal grand jury is getting ready to investigate Democrats. Not just any Democrats, we're talking top Democratic officials. And they're looking into what Davis calls Democratic lawfare campaigns against Donald Trump. Yeah, lawfare, using the legal system as a weapon. That's what he's claiming. And here's where it gets crazy. Davis says this grand jury is convening in January, and they're going to consider criminal charges. Criminal charges against leading Democratic officials. Let that sink in for a second. We're potentially talking about prosecutors going after the prosecutors. The investigators investigating the investigators. It's like some twisted political inception movie playing out in real time. But before we go any further, real quick, let's be honest. You can't really trust mainstream media anymore. That's why we built Pump Politics, to bring you real stories, real context, and no corporate spin. If you want to stay ahead of the headlines, join our free newsletter. We'll send the news straight to your inbox every day. Just click the link in the description to join. And if you just want to support what we're doing, join us, be part of the community that actually cares about the truth. All right, let's get back to the video.
The former president denies any wrongdoing. Hush money payments are not illegal under state law. Any potential indictment could rest on how the payment was accounted for. A possible misdemeanor case or, in a legal gamble, Bragg could pursue a lower-level felony.
I'm holding out hope that justice will prevail. And if that happens, then there will be no charge, because it's a case that will die on the vine.
Top Republicans attacking the Democratic DA's possible case as politically motivated.
I think in your heart of hearts, you know, too, that you think this is just political.
Garen, so the grand jury reconvenes today. There could be a vote on a possible indictment. If that were to happen, then what would the next steps be?
If the grand jury hands up an indictment, Mr. Trump's attorneys would be expected to negotiate his surrender, and then, accompanied by the Secret Service, he would go through a process similar to anyone else who's charged with a crime in New York City. He'd be processed in the building behind me, he'd be fingerprinted, have his mugshot taken, and eventually enter a plea and arraignment in open court.
But wait, there's more. The very next day, November 6th, reports come out that the Department of Justice is preparing new grand jury subpoenas as part of this probe. So this isn't just talk. This is actually happening. Documents are being prepared. Witnesses are probably getting nervous. Lawyers are making phone calls. This is real. Now you'd think Republicans would be celebrating, right? You'd think they'd all be lined up behind Trump, cheering this on, ready to finally hold Democrats accountable for what they see as years of political persecution. But no, that's not what's happening at all. Instead, GOP leadership is fracturing. Some senior Republicans are actually distancing themselves from Trump. They're worried about the political fallout. They're scared this whole thing is going to blow up in their face. Meanwhile, other Republicans are doubling down. They're backing Trump harder than ever. They want these investigations. They want subpoenas. They want criminal charges. And this divide, this split in the party is getting ugly. We're talking heated arguments behind closed doors, public disagreements, passive-aggressive statements to the press. The Republican Party is eating itself alive over this. And Trump? Oh, Trump is loving this. He's on social media posting things like, and I quote, "These radical lunatics must be prosecuted for their illegal and highly unethical behavior." Exclamation point and everything. He's not backing down. He's pushing harder. He wants blood. But here's the thing that nobody's really talking about. This grand jury leak didn't just happen by accident. Someone leaked this information, and leaks like this are strategic. Someone wanted this out there. Someone wanted the public to know what's coming. And that means there's a whole other layer to this story that we need to unpack. Because think about the timing here. We just had Democratic wins in recent state elections. Trump has been publicly calling on Republicans to eliminate the Senate filibuster so they can pass voter reform quickly. There's already massive tension inside the party about how to handle legislative strategy, even though Trump's in his second term and can't run again. But his influence, his control over the party, that's what's at stake here. So when this grand jury information gets leaked right now, at this exact moment, you have to ask yourself, who benefits? Who wanted this story out there? And why now? And that's what makes this so wild. We're not just talking about another political scandal. We're not just talking about investigations and subpoenas and potential criminal charges. We're talking about a fundamental battle for control of the Republican Party. We're talking about whether Trump's influence continues to dominate or whether traditional GOP leadership finally breaks free. This grand jury situation is the flashpoint. It's the issue that's forcing every Republican to pick a side. Are you with Trump or are you against him? There's no middle ground anymore. No safe zone. Every Republican leader has to decide right now. Do you support investigating Democrats for lawfare, or do you distance yourself and risk Trump's wrath? And here's what's really crazy. This whole situation is just getting started. The grand jury doesn't even convene until January. We're still months away from any actual charges or indictments, which means this story is going to drag on. The infighting is going to get worse. The divide is going to get deeper. And by the time we get to January, who knows where the Republican Party will be. So buckle up, because what we're watching right now is either the beginning of Trump's ultimate political revenge against his enemies, or the beginning of the end of his control over the GOP. And honestly, I have no idea which one it's going to be. Okay, so let's dig into what's actually happening here. Because the surface level story, the headlines, they don't tell you everything. Most people hear grand jury investigation and they think, oh, just another political circus, just more partisan warfare. Nothing's going to happen. But that's not what this is. This is way bigger. First, we need to understand what lawfare actually means, because Democrats are going to say that's a made up term. They're going to say Republicans are just creating conspiracy theories. But lawfare is real. It's the strategic use of legal proceedings to intimidate or delegitimize an opponent. And Trump and his allies genuinely believe, like truly believe, that Democrats have been using the legal system as a weapon against him for years. Think about it. We had the Russia investigation, then impeachment, then a second impeachment, then criminal investigations in New York, civil cases, investigations in Georgia, the classified documents case, January 6th, prosecutions. It's been nonstop legal action against Trump since 2016? Nearly a decade of constant legal battles. And whether you think those investigations were legitimate or not, you can't deny the sheer volume. It's unprecedented in American political history. So when Mike Davis announces this Florida grand jury is going to investigate Democratic lawfare, what he's really saying is we're going to look at whether Democrats coordinated these legal attacks, whether there was conspiracy, whether prosecutors and investigators were politically motivated instead of following the evidence, and if they were, whether that's criminal. Now here's where most people get confused. They think, wait, how can investigating someone be illegal? Prosecutors investigate people all the time. That's their job. But the argument Trump's team is making is this. If you open investigations without probable cause, if you use your prosecutorial power for political purposes instead of legitimate law enforcement, that's abuse of power, and abuse of power can be criminal. Think about it like this. If a cop pulls you over because they don't like your political bumper sticker, not because you were speeding, that's abuse of authority. If a prosecutor opens an investigation because they want to damage you politically, not because they have evidence of a crime, same thing, abuse of power. And in this case, Trump's team is saying that abuse was coordinated at the highest levels of the Democratic Party. Now, do they have evidence of this? That's the million-dollar question. And honestly, we don't know yet, but here's what we do know. This grand jury is happening. The DOJ is preparing subpoenas, which means someone, somewhere in the Justice Department, thinks there's enough smoke to investigate the fire, and that's what has Republicans freaking out. Because if this investigation moves forward, if subpoenas go out, if witnesses testify, this could get really messy really fast. We're talking about potentially dragging Democratic leaders into grand jury testimony. We're talking about prosecutors and investigators having to defend their decisions under oath. We're talking about internal DOJ communications becoming public record. Can you imagine the headlines when those emails start leaking? When we see what prosecutors were saying behind closed doors about Trump, it's going to be explosive. But here's the flip side. And this is why some Republicans are distancing themselves. What if this investigation finds nothing? What if the grand jury looks at all the evidence and says, nope, no conspiracy. These were legitimate investigations. Then what? Then Trump and the GOP look like they were on a political witch hunt. Then Democrats get to say, see, we told you this was all legitimate. Trump's just bitter and vengeful. That's the gamble. That's the risk. And that's why GOP leadership is split right down the middle. You've got one faction saying, we need to do this. We need to hold Democrats accountable. We need to show our base that we're willing to fight back. These people believe the investigation will find evidence of coordination and abuse. They think this is a winning political strategy that will energize conservative voters and vindicate Trump's claims. Then you've got another faction saying, this is dangerous. This could backfire spectacularly. We should focus on policy and legislation, not revenge investigations. These people are worried about moderate voters. They're worried about the political center. They're thinking about future elections and whether this makes Republicans look petty and vindictive. And both sides, they're making their arguments behind closed doors. They're fighting about this. And the leak, oh man, the leak, that's what brought this fight into public view. Because now everyone knows this grand jury is coming. Now everyone has to take a position. You can't hide anymore. You can't stay neutral. You can't just wait and see which way the wind blows. So let's talk about that leak for a second, because this is important. Federal grand jury information is supposed to be secret, like seriously secret. There are laws about this. You can't just go around telling people what a grand jury is investigating. But someone did. Someone leaked this information to Mike Davis, or Davis is part of the team and decided to go public. Either way, it's out there now. In leaks like this, they're always strategic. Someone wanted this information public. Someone wanted Republicans to know this investigation is happening. Someone wanted to apply pressure. But pressure on who? Democrats? Or pressure on Republicans to fall in line behind Trump? That's the question. Because if you're trying to pressure Democrats, going public makes sense. You're saying, hey, we're coming for you. Get ready. Lawyer up. That puts them on defense. That makes them panic. That forces them to spend time and money preparing for legal battles instead of focusing on their political agenda. But if you're trying to pressure Republicans, going public also makes sense. You're saying this train is leaving the station. You better get on board or get left behind. That forces Republicans to choose sides publicly where their voters can see their decision. My guess? It's both. I think this leak serves multiple purposes. It warns Democrats that Trump isn't done fighting. It rallies Trump's base who want to see Democrats held accountable. And it forces Republicans to either support the investigation or explain to their voters why they're not backing Trump. And that's brilliant strategy if you're Trump. Because now every Republican has to answer the question, do you support investigating Democrats for lawfare? If you say yes, great, you're on Team Trump. If you say no, you're branded as weak, establishment, anti-Trump. There's no good answer if you're a Republican who wants to distance yourself from Trump, but also keep your political career. Now let's talk about what happens next, because this story isn't close to being over. The grand jury convenes in January. That's still 2 months away. 2 months of speculation, 2 months of leaks, 2 months of Republicans fighting with each other, 2 months of Democrats preparing their defense and crafting their messaging strategy. And during those 2 months, oh man, it's going to get wild. You're going to see Trump allies ramping up the rhetoric. You're going to see Democrats calling this a political hit job. You're going to see moderate Republicans trying to stay neutral and getting attacked from both sides. You're going to see the media losing their minds with hot takes and expert analysis. It's going to be chaos, pure political chaos. But here's what really matters. When that grand jury actually starts hearing evidence, when subpoenas go out, when witnesses testify, that's when we'll see if this investigation has legs. That's when we'll find out if there's actual evidence of coordination and abuse, or if this is just political theater. And depending on what that grand jury finds or doesn't find, the Republican Party could look very different by spring. If the investigation produces indictments, Trump's power grows, his narrative gets validated, his control over the party becomes even stronger. But if the investigation fizzles out, if no charges come, Trump looks weak, his enemies feel emboldened, the Republican establishment sees an opening to push back against his influence. So yeah, this grand jury leak isn't just another news story. It's not just another scandal that'll be forgotten in a week. This is a pivotal moment that could reshape Republican politics for years to come. And that's why everyone in Washington is panicking right now, because nobody knows how this ends. And can you believe this? We're watching history unfold in real time. This is the kind of political drama that people write books about decades later. except we're living through it right now. We're seeing the battle lines being drawn. We're watching the Republican Party tear itself apart over loyalty to one man versus traditional party values. It's wild, it's unprecedented, and it's only going to get crazier from here. The question is, which side comes out on top? Which vision for the Republican Party wins? And what does that mean for American politics going forward? All right, so let's break this down into simple terms. What are the actual key points here that you need to understand? Because we've covered a lot, and I want to make sure the big picture is crystal clear. Point 1, Trump's team is launching a massive counteroffensive. For years, Trump has been investigated, indicted, sued, you name it. And now, in his second term, he's not just playing defense anymore. He's going on offense. This Florida grand jury is about turning the tables. It's about investigating the investigators. And whether you love Trump or hate him, you have to admit that's a bold move. That's a declaration of war. Point 2, the Republican Party is fracturing. And I don't mean little cracks. I mean deep, fundamental splits that might not heal. You've got the Trump loyalists who want full-scale investigations into Democrats, and you've got the establishment Republicans who think this is dangerous political overreach. These two factions are not on speaking terms right now. They're actively working against each other, and that internal civil war is only going to get worse before it gets better, if it gets better at all. Point 3, this leak was absolutely strategic. Grand jury information doesn't just accidentally become public. Someone made a calculated decision to put this story out there, and that decision is already reshaping the political landscape. It's forcing Republicans to choose sides. It's putting Democrats on notice, and is setting up a massive showdown that's going to dominate headlines for months. Point 4, the timing matters more than people realize. This leak came right after Democratic wins in state elections, right when Trump was pushing Republicans to kill the filibuster, right when there was already tension about party direction and strategy. This wasn't random. This was designed to shake things up at a critical moment when Republicans were already divided about their path forward. So why does this matter? Why should you care about some grand jury in Florida that hasn't even started yet? Well, let me tell you. First, this is about power, pure political power. Trump wants to cement his control over the Republican Party permanently. He wants to prove that he's still the dominant force in conservative politics, even in his second term. And going after Democrats legally, that's a power move. That shows his base he's fighting for them. That energizes his supporters. That keeps him at the center of every political conversation, which is exactly where Trump wants to be. But it's also incredibly risky. Because if this investigation doesn't deliver, if no charges come out of it, Trump looks weak. He looks like he was bluffing. And that creates space for other Republicans to challenge his authority. So Trump needs this investigation to produce results. He needs indictments. He needs convictions. He needs perp walks and mugshots and guilty verdicts. Otherwise, this whole thing could backfire spectacularly. Second, this is about precedent. If the DOJ actually brings criminal charges against Democratic officials for how they conducted investigations, that changes everything. That means prosecutors can be prosecuted for their prosecutorial decisions. That means using the legal system politically, if that's what happened, has serious consequences. And that precedent would reshape how political investigations work going forward. Think about what that means for future administrations. Think about what that means for the next president, whoever that is. If this president gets set, every prosecutor who opens a politically sensitive investigation is going to have to worry about getting investigated themselves when power changes hands. That's huge. That's a fundamental shift in how our justice system operates. But again, flip side, if this investigation happens and finds no wrongdoing, that's also precedent. That says Trump's claims of lawfare were exaggerated or false. That validates Democratic investigations into Trump. That makes future Republican complaints about political persecution harder to take seriously. So either way, this grand jury sets precedent, and that precedent will influence American politics for years, maybe decades. We're talking about establishing new rules for what's acceptable when investigating political opponents. Third, this is about the future of the Republican Party beyond Trump. Even though Trump can't run for president again, his influence over who the next Republican nominee is, that's huge. If Trump comes out of this stronger, if his investigation succeeds, he gets to pick the next candidate. He gets to shape the party platform. He gets to determine what Republican politics looks like for the next generation. But if he comes out weaker, if Republicans successfully distance themselves, then everything becomes wide open. You'll see establishment candidates challenging Trump's influence. You'll see debates about the party's direction. You'll see a real battle for the soul of conservatism that we haven't seen in years. And that's what makes this so critical right now. This isn't just about Trump versus Democrats. This is about the future structure of American politics. This is about whether Trump's brand of politics continues to dominate or whether we see a shift back toward traditional Republican values and strategy. Now let's talk about what happens next in practical terms, because we're still in the early stages here and there's a lot more coming. Between now and January, you're going to see a media blitz like nothing we've seen before. Trump allies are going to do the talk show circuit, explaining why this investigation is necessary and justified. Democrats are going to push back hard, calling it political revenge and authoritarian overreach. Every cable news network is going to have panels of experts arguing about this nonstop. It's going to be exhausting, but you can't look away because it's that important. Then in January, the grand jury convenes. That's when subpoenas go out. That's when witnesses have to decide whether to cooperate or fight in court. That's when we start seeing actual legal maneuvering instead of just political rhetoric. And that's when this story goes from speculation to reality, from talk to action. My prediction? This drags on for months. Grand juries don't work fast, especially when you're investigating complex claims about coordination and abuse of power involving high-level officials. We're talking about reviewing thousands of documents, interviewing dozens of witnesses, building a case that can withstand legal challenges. That takes serious time. So don't expect quick resolution. Don't expect indictments next month. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And during that marathon, the Republican Party is going to keep tearing itself apart. Trump's going to keep attacking Democrats on social media. Democrats are going to keep calling this a witch hunt and comparing it to authoritarian regimes. And the American public, we're going to be stuck watching this political soap opera play out in real time on every news channel and social media platform. But here's the bottom line. This grand jury leak matters because it represents a fundamental escalation in American political warfare. We're not just talking about investigations anymore. We're talking about investigating the investigators. We're not just talking about holding politicians accountable. We're talking about potentially criminalizing political opposition, which is a very dangerous road to go down. And whether you think that's justice or revenge, whether you think Trump's claims are valid or vindictive, you have to recognize that we've entered new territory here. This is uncharted. This is unprecedented. And how this plays out will determine what's acceptable in American politics going forward. Think about the implications for a second. If prosecutors can be criminally charged for opening politically motivated investigations, what does that mean for future investigations? Does it make prosecutors more cautious? Does it protect people from abuse of power? Or does it create a chilling effect where legitimate investigations don't happen because prosecutors are scared of retaliation? These are real questions with serious consequences, and we're about to find out the answers whether we're ready or not. Also, think about what this means for political norms. For decades, there was an unwritten rule that you don't use the Justice Department to go after your political opponents. That's what authoritarian regimes do. That's not what democracies do. But that norm has been eroding for years, and this grand jury investigation might be the final nail in the coffin of that norm. The final moment where we say, okay, those old rules don't apply anymore. Because once this precedent is set, once one party uses the DOJ to investigate the other party's investigations, there's no going back. The next time power changes hands, the other side will do the same thing. It becomes a cycle of revenge. Investigation after investigation after investigation. And at that point, does anyone trust the Justice Department anymore? Does anyone believe investigations are legitimate? Or does everything just become political theater where the outcome depends on who's in power? That's the danger here. That's what some Republicans are worried about. They're not defending Democrats. They're not saying the investigations into Trump were all perfect and justified. They're saying be careful what you wish for, because if we go down this road, if we normalize using the Justice Department for political revenge, we might not like where it leads. We might not like the world we create, but the Trump loyalists, they don't care about those concerns. They think Democrats already crossed that line. They think the old norms are dead. They think the only way to stop the cycle is to hit back harder, to show Democrats there are consequences, to make an example that will deter future political prosecutions. So you've got two completely different philosophies clashing here, and neither side is backing down. Neither side is willing to compromise. So yeah, keep your eyes on this story, because what seems like just another Trump scandal right now, this could be the thing that defines the next era of American politics. This could be the moment that determines whether legal accountability applies equally or whether it's just another weapon in partisan warfare. This could be the moment that determines whether political norms still matter or whether we've entered a new era where anything goes as long as your side wins. And honestly, I don't know which one it's going to be, but I know this. It's going to be one hell of a ride finding out. And we're all going to be watching. We're all going to have opinions. We're all going to be arguing about this with our friends and family and strangers on the internet, because that's just how political discourse works now. Because that's where we are now. Every political development becomes a test of loyalty, Every scandal becomes a battle line. Every investigation becomes proof that your side is right and the other side is corrupt. And this grand jury situation is going to amplify all of that. It's going to make everything more intense, more divisive, more exhausting. But here's the thing. You can't ignore it. You can't just tune out and hope it goes away, because the decisions being made right now, the precedents being set, the battles being fought, they're going to affect American politics for decades. Your kids are going to read about this in history books. And what happens next determines what kind of political system they inherit, what kind of democracy we pass down to the next generation. So pay attention, stay informed, think critically. Don't just accept whatever narrative your preferred news source feeds you. Look at the evidence, consider multiple perspectives, and make up your own mind about what's right and what's wrong in this situation. That's all I've got for today. But trust me, this story is just getting started. We're in the first act of what's going to be a long, dramatic saga. So make sure you're subscribed, because we're going to be covering every twist and turn as this thing unfolds, every leak, every subpoena, every Republican fighting with another Republican, every Democrat scrambling to prepare their defense. It's all coming, and it's going to be wild. See you in the next one.